Donald Trump is going to war with the world, which should go fine. I think we can all
He's really
assume that.
doing everything he can to make sure people stop talking about the Epstein files.
He has announced that we have sent warships to Venezuela,
Which I'm
to
gonna
the
say,
waters off Venezuela.
this is reason 4052 why you don't give rapists aircraft carriers.
That is a good plan.
And also why you just shouldn't have presidents.
Also shouldn't have presidents. Also shouldn't have rapist presidents. I think those are all points well made. But so he's sending these warships, these destroyers, over towards the waters off Venezuela, ostensibly to stop narco trafficking, which he claims Maduro's involved in. Of course, I know you'll be shocked to learn it has nothing to do with narco trafficking. It has everything to do with the fact that we've wanted to crush Venezuela for generations now. We truly hate Venezuela, meaning the ruling elite. And the main reason, which I've mentioned multiple times on this show, but you will not hear on mainstream media evers, is that Venezuela has more oil underneath of it than any country on earth. There's more oil reserves in Venezuela than anywhere. So the United States, the ruling elite, Donald Trump, despise Venezuela. And then you add on top of it that they're socialists and that they don't allow U.S. corporations to take advantage of all their shit, all their shiny stuff. Really, really a reason to hate them.
Venezuela is already destabilized in the sense that tens of thousands of people die and are sick each year because of U.S. sanctions against Venezuela, U.S. sanctions against the world kill more than 500,000 people a year, and Venezuela is one of those nations.
And they estimated 40,000 had died from U.S. sanctions several years back, but then that
was like a 3-year period.
Yeah, more recently, they said it's up to 100,000 people have been killed by our sanctions on Venezuela, and so it's even higher now.
That's, of course, destabilizing, but in the sense that the people of Venezuela are ignorant of what's going on? No. And in fact, this is the problem with, the U.S. projecting its propaganda, is that the people of Venezuela, the people of Cuba, are very well aware of who the culprit is, like who the architects of their oppression are. And they're very well aware that it's the United States and that it's not Maduro's fault. It wasn't Chavez's fault before him. So they're very understanding. So the U.S. attempt to destabilize and then blame it on the person, that the people elected is not working because the people understand where it's coming from. It's the same story in Iran. The U.S. is hoping that people elsewhere will fall for the propaganda, like oftentimes, unfortunately, a lot of Americans do, but that's not the case because these places have worked very hard, part of this being the fact that they are socialist, have worked very hard on literacy rates. Their literacy rates are rising while the U.S. is falling, and education as to, again, who the architects of their oppression are. So it's important to note that the U.S. is not going to win in destabilizing in that sense, because people are very well aware.
Correct. And Venezuela has proven quite tenacious for those reasons. The attempt to pretend that Juan Guaido was the president of Venezuela failed spectacularly. The stealing of the Venezuelan embassy has not impacted them. The sanctions that have not stopped Venezuela from functioning. Every once in a while their electrical grid will go down, and there's a fair belief that at least some of it has to do with hacking from the United States, and that has not stopped the people from being strong in Venezuela. And perhaps the biggest example is they literally couped the country in 2002 or 2004 when they took down Chavez for 2 days and cut off all communication and kidnapped him. But even that, Venezuela, the people of Venezuela took to the streets, got Chavez back into power, and that coup lasted for 2 days.
And this also speaks to something that we don't have in this country, which is actual legitimate elections. So, Maduro, for instance, is a former bus driver. Can you all imagine a bus driver in the United States becoming president?
Hold on, Trump wasn't a bus driver at one point?
Because their elections, and this is not just me saying this, these are international observers who go to nations to check and see if they have fair elections. And time again, Venezuela, unlike the US, which does not allow a lot of people to monitor our elections, Venezuela says, come. check out our elections. Let us know,
yeah.
like, write all about it. And people do. And they find time and time again that these are fair elections where the people actually vote for their needs. And then Chavez or Maduro actually act on those needs, not just because that's what the people want, but because they come from a place of knowing what it feels like, i.e. a bus driver. So this is also a symptom of that, of having people that you choose as your leader to act, who actually can speak and act upon what your needs are because they know it personally and they understand it politically.
And Trump has said he's the peace president. Let's remember that. Peace president sending warships to Venezuela. Also directing the military to target foreign drug cartels in Mexico. And there's more recent articles about how the Pentagon has said they're have current actions to deal with Mexican drug cartels. But this raises a lot of questions, such as, does this mean the U.S. military is going to invade Mexico? Because if they go in to try and target drug cartels in Mexico, that is technically an invasion. That's the U.S. military in Mexico.
It wouldn't be the first time we invaded Mexico.
True. or stole some of their land.
Yeah.
A lot of their land. Or is this just saying, well, we'll fight the Sinaloa cartel in the United States? It raises a lot of questions. But this is from New York Times the other day. President Trump has secretly signed a directive to the Pentagon to begin using military force against Latin American drug cartels. And specifically, Mexico is, and of course Maduro is the one. But here was Claudia Sheinbaum's response. She said,
she's rad. I like her.
Yeah, she says, we were informed that this executive order was coming and that it had nothing to do with the participation of any military personnel or any institution in our territory, adding that the directive referred exclusively to actions within U.S. territory, although Trump has already sent close to 10,000 troops to the border. No, she said, absolutely not. The United States is not going to send its military into Mexico. We cooperate, we collaborate, but there will be no invasion. That's ruled out. Because
That's ruled out.
in addition to what we've stated in all our conversations, it's not allowed, nor is it part of any agreement.
Touche. I would like to point out that, the collaboration aspect I find a little bit problematic, but I think it's important to note that the U.S. has forces, however you want to call that, but the U.S. has forces already in Mexico. So, and this is also something that I've talked about on Project Censored, with folks like Harsha Walia, about the fluidity of borders. So there's a very militarized and now painted black, in parts, border between Mexico and the United States. But that doesn't really apply to the U.S. empire and its forces, because the U.S. empire has forces in Mexico that it deploys it in various ways and in various communities. And so really, this collaboration that she's talking about already speaks to U.S. military or law enforcement or whatever presence inside of Mexico. So I think it's important to note that, not because an actual military invasion wouldn't be bad, but I think it's also important to note that this kind of this idea that there's this stark separation and our people don't go over, that is total bullshit. The U.S. has forces in Mexico already, so the border doesn't really apply to the U.S. war machine.
True. Yeah, borders are bullshit. And borders are usually mainly used by the ruling elite to keep all of us in check. But I will say that it would become a different thing if the U.S. were firing on Mexicans.
Of course. I'm not saying that wouldn't be absolute batshit. I'm just saying that we got to contextualize these things. So we're not starting from this point of, oh my gosh, and we've just never had military or police or law enforcement in Mexico. Yes, we do. And we have.
Let's also say that, as with Venezuela, this is not really about drug cartels. This is also about threatening Mexico, because the U.S. is a belligerent, collapsing empire. Our ruling elite hate Mexico for a variety of reasons, one of them being that Mexico is a member of BRICS. They're supportive of BRICS. They're supportive of de-dollarization, whether they say it as outwardly as some other countries do or not. Mexico has talked about creating a lithium version of OPEC, basically, where the countries that have the most lithium work together to use that leverage, use that power like OPEC uses oil. And the United States doesn't want that either. We very much need lithium for all of our batteries and all of our new electronic gadgets. And so there's another example of how the U.S. hates what Mexico's been doing, and with AMLO and with Claudia Sheinbaum. So that's what this is really about. It's not really about the Sinaloa cartel. That is just a huge problem for the ruling elite. It's really just ruining their day.
I mean, you can tell how much the U.S. has problems with, really does not like drugs coming into the country based on the opioid epidemic. You can tell how much the U.S. cares about people getting addicted to drugs.
This is the militarized police in D.C. told to harass people sitting on their own stoops.
You got your ID on you, Chip?
No, I live right here.
Okay, cool.
It's a cigarette.
All right.
Come on. Did y'all get a call or something right here?
No, so we're doing checks, keeping everybody safe down here, right? Have you heard of the federal surge that Donald Trump's putting out?
No.
Right. You don't follow like
No.
Code 3, anything like that people are putting up? All right, so yeah, Trump's got all federal agencies kind of coming together for 7 days and going out, trying to stop the violent crime, all kind of stuff.
And
so we're out here contacting people, talking to them, right? Quality of life offenses, smoking, drinking in public, right? Can't happen outside. So we're just out here trying to inform people and educate people. It's not like we're trying to just go grab people and ruin someone's life over a joint or something like that.
Yeah,
Right?
of course not.
But they
You're
are
such a
ruining
good
people's
guy.
lives. And quality of life stuff. You can't smoke a cigarette on your own fucking stairs. That's the quality. Oh, that really
Also,
makes our quality of life better. I'll tell you.
Can we talk about like how a white dude walking up to a black guy and going, "Do you have your ID on you, champ?" is basically like the 2025 version of like, "What are you doing, boy?" Am I wrong?
He's showing he's cool. He's
it's
showing he's
cool
down. He's down.
No one has called anyone champ in a non-condescending way. That has just never, ever happened. There are a bunch of videos out there like this. So this is not the only one. And quite a few of them do show violence by federal and city law enforcement. There's a really good interview that I have coming out with a DC organizer, Natasha Napper, that will be out on Project Censored this coming Monday. And they talk a lot about like these checkpoints and also the sort of the violent lashing out of law enforcement. And also, again, the context, even before this happened, DC is home to almost 40 different law enforcement agencies. That's not hyperbole. That's just it, both federal and local. And so when you like further ramp that up and then add National Guard into the mix, it's really not surprising that you've got hundreds of arrests that are for nothing, people being stopped, not because of any crime, just to harass people. And of course, guess who it is? It's Black and brown folks, in particular, people who they feel look like immigrants.
Yeah, I feel like if a white guy had been sitting there in a nice suit, they probably would have let him be.
Yeah, do you think the white people smoking cigarettes outside of like nice restaurants downtown are being stopped by National Guard? No. Something that Natasha and I also talk about is how DC was particularly vulnerable to this because of DC lacking statehood and lacking certain rights.
That's why he was able to do it so easily. Yeah.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Y'all can listen to that interview which comes out on Monday. This video is indicative of the type of bullshittery that's happening in DC, but that also is being planned for many other cities. I mean, Trump already mentioned Baltimore, Los Angeles, and New York in his speech. The Pentagon has already been tapped to create this task force so that it can unleash National Guard and other federal forces on cities across America. So anybody who's not in DC going, phew, I'm really glad that's not me. It could be. And so we have to remain vigilant and work on these mutual aid networks. And when I say like we keep us safe, I'm not just saying that as some cute little slogan, like legit, because those pieces of shit that are harassing people sitting on their own damn porches will not keep you safe.
And let's remember that when you see things like this, a lot of people go, "Oh, that's kind of lame," but he's just like, he didn't do anything to the guy. He just said to him. When people minimize this stuff, this is most of what even cops do prior to what Trump's unveiled in D.C. is they wander around, insert themselves into people's lives for essentially nothing, and then a certain percentage of that time they find a reason to arrest, harass, and sometimes kill someone. So this stuff about walking up and saying, "Hey, you see you smoking a cigarette. Can I see your ID?" Well, maybe the guy's had a bad day and he's like, "Go fuck off." And then he gets attacked by cops and then that gets strangled and he dies. I mean, this is the type of shit that leads to people getting murdered, or even if less than that, even if you're not looking at the murders, you look at okay, so he gets arrested for, harassing a police officer or whatever bullshit charges they give against him. Well, once you're in the system and you're in prison, shit can happen in prison that is kind of not really of your doing. Okay, so you get in a fight in prison because a guy came up and punched you in the face. Well, now you're staying in for another year. Oh, well, then that gets longer. You can truly get someone stuck in prison for a decade because a cop decided to ask you about a cigarette. I mean, that is how the system works. It also is how and why the United States is the world's largest prison state in the world. More prisoners per capita, more prisoners per sheer number. Other countries are not like this. Also, fun fact, these little small things like cigarettes or open beverages or whatever, even though they may be technically against the law, can't walk down the street with an open beverage, they're only largely used to arrest people of color and poor people. In New York City, the numbers used to be, and maybe they still are, 4% of arrests for open alcohol are against white people in New York City.
Well,
that's not because white people don't have open alcohol.
It's also why
beverages.
loitering became an offense, because you're more likely in non-white communities just because of the culture of hanging out, which honestly, I think we should do more of. But it's why loitering became an offense, because they didn't like people literally taking up space on a sidewalk or on stoops or whatever. So now they can ticket them with loitering, which again, to your point, puts you in the system. It puts you. So this is why these things started, because as the saying goes, I think was it Nixon's right-hand man who said you couldn't make it illegal to be black. So we came up with all this other shit.
Yeah,
exactly.
Ehrlichman.
Yeah, like we couldn't make it illegal to be black yet or again. And so we had to come up with loitering. That just had to become an offense.
Yeah. Hey, if you look up the quote, which is a great quote, he revealed in the 90s that it's where the drug war really got amped up. There might have been something before this, but they amped it up under Nixon. And as Ehrlichman said, we couldn't make it illegal to be black or to be an activist, anti-war activist. So we used the drug war as cover to go after those communities.